Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Sight for White, White Sense and Dress for Less. Welcome you to this week's Talking News on Friday the 14th of March 2025. As some of you may heard, I have today announced in the press my intention to retire. This year, on the 5th of April, it is the charity's 160th birthday and indeed my 55th. I have therefore taken the decision to retire from the charity and take some time with my children before they fly the nest off to university. It has been a difficult, very hard decision, but I think that the charity is now in a great place. We have moved on so much in the last 5 years, and I really think that it's time for someone else to come in and take over the helm. I want to sincerely thank every single member of staff, volunteer, trustee and member who have made my 5 years here as CEO and the previous 2 years as finance officer such an enjoyable, wonderful and memorable experience. I truly hope that the team have all made a very positive difference to everybody in the last 5 years. Thank you, Lisa, CEO, Sight for White, White Sense and Dress for Less.
Here is this week's charity news on the 14th of March 2025. Swimming at Medina is on Monday between 1:15 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We have the whole pool, so whether you wish to swim lanes or just have gentle exercise in the pool, you will be made very welcome. The cost is £6 and transport is available, although limited. All members are very welcome to join.
There will be yoga at Millbrook House on Tuesday between 1:45 p.m. and 2:45 p.m. The cost is £4, including refreshments afterwards. This group is now full, but if you wish to put your name down on the waiting list, please call the office.
Coffee and chat is on Wednesday, starting at 10 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. The cost is £2 to include drinks and cake. Staff are on hand to help with any queries and to demonstrate equipment.
Our dress agency, For Less Agency, is holding a fashion show on March the 29th at Cowes Masonic Lodge. The tickets are £12 each, but you can bring mum along for £10. This includes a glass of Prosecco and light refreshments. Tickets can be purchased from Dress for Less in Newport.
Our fundraising for Easter is going very well, and we thank all our wonderful knitters for taking part. This year, our Easter novelties will be on sale in various locations across the island, as well as Millbrook House, for a suggested donation of £2.50.
Our monthly 100 Club has spare balls available. If anyone would like to buy a ball, it is £2 per month or £24 for the full year. The more balls in the draw, the higher the prize money each month. If you would like to take part in our monthly draw, please call the office. This is part of our fundraising activities.
This is Michael reading an article from Ireland Echo. Apollo Theatre to stage Ira Levin's play Death Trap in April. Ira Levin's play Death Trap opens at the Apollo Theatre, Newport, on the 4th of April. This classic thriller has never failed to keep audiences on the edge of their seats. Described as a play within a play, it concerns a washed-up playwright who finds a chance to rise to the top once more. Sidney Brull hasn't written a play for 18 years when he receives a script from a former student, Clifford Anderson. That's a guaranteed success. His wife Myra suggests the two men could collaborate. Sidney jokes that it'd be just as easy to murder the young man and steal the script for his own. When Clifford arrives later that evening, no one, not even the visiting psychic, could predict where the dark events of the night will go. Who is innocent? Who just seems that way? Is anyone really safe when a man sees a clean shot at success? Death Trap is a roller coaster ride that alternately amuses and terrifies, which is exactly what you want from a thriller. a sharply funny play full of twists and turns that keep an audience enthralled. A hugely popular stage and screen success, the longest-running comedy thriller on Broadway. This ingeniously constructed play offers a rare and skillful blending of two priceless theatrical ingredients: gasp-inducing thrills and spontaneous laughter. With unexpected plot twists, clever dialogue, and plenty of suspense, this is a thrilling theatrical experience that will leave you guessing until the end. Ira Levin is recognised as one of the most accomplished writers of suspense and horror fiction of all time. His most popular novels include Rosemary's Baby, The Stepford Wives, and The Boys from Brazil, all of which, alongside Death Trap, were adapted into successful films. Steve Redding, the director of Death Trap, says the opportunity to direct such a thrilling and popular play was just too good to miss. The cast have captured the essence of the playwright's intentions and will have audience on the edge of their seats. Death Trap will be performed at the Apollo Theatre from the 4th to the 12th of April. No performances Sunday or Monday. Book online at www.apollo-theatre.org.uk or ring the box office on 01983 21 0010.
This is Petrina reading from the Island Echo. Nature Group a step closer to opening up public access to Harbour Farm. Following a sustained campaign over the last 3 years, the Harbour Farm Nature Group says there appears to be a way forward following a recent and long-awaited meeting with local authorities. Campaigners have now met with the Environment Agency, RSPB, and Natural England to discuss the group's ideas for access to the derelict Harbour Farm site off the Embankment Road in Bembridge. The farm and surrounding area was bought by the EA in 2011 with the objectives of managing the site to reduce flood risk and to better manage the surrounding site of special scientific interest, SSSI. The group, newly named as a nature group and registered as a community interest company, have long thought the site offered great potential for a number of cultural activities, ranging from bird hides to a nature walk and nature hub. These activities seem to fit well with the new local nature recovery strategy guidance that includes the importance of cultural activities and that it should reflect local circumstances, including the most important issues to local people. The hub itself could facilitate such activities as educational opportunities for forest schools and the new GCSE in natural history, a qualification that offers young people the opportunity to engage with nature whilst addressing environmental issues as well as mental health well-being groups in line with new RSPB initiatives. Whilst the Environment Agency turned down an offer to sell the farm to the group, the meeting looked at how the organisation could work productively together on these aspirations. The central farm area is outside of the surrounding SSSI, but it is, of course, still in an extremely sensitive setting. Fortunately, the Nature Group had the opportunity to show they have the experience and expertise to mitigate disturbance whilst working under the slogan, Nature's Future First, an objective, of course, shared by all. Listening to the group talk, Dante Mullins, the RSPB area manager, invited members up to their arm reserve to see what they could learn from their work there. Following up conversations have already taken place with a promise from the RSPB to look at creating some key viewing points along the old railway path. This would enable greater opportunities to view birds on the reserve without disturbing them. Dante Munns said, "We recognise the importance of connecting people with nature and welcome the opportunities to collaborate with other partners and interest groups where our goals align." RSPB Brading Marshes Reserve is home to some very special wildlife, and we would love to enhance opportunities for people to experience this. However, it is crucial that this is done sensitively to avoid disturbing the species we protect or compromising our abilities to manage and expand the vital habitats they rely on. It was agreed the Nature Group would refine their vision for the future of Harbour Farm and surrounds to seek further ways forward. To that end, the EE is allowing the group access to the farm to facilitate this. As a long-term supporter of the group, Joe Robertson MP has said, "I agree with the Nature Group's aims of opening parts of the harbour site up to the public, which would improve educational opportunities as well as promote sensitive interaction with the wetland habitat. This aligns with the EA's original aim when it took control of the site. I'm pleased to be backing the local campaign and welcome engagement from the EA, RSPB and Natural England." A spokesperson for the Environment Agency says, "There is still significant work needed at Harbour Farm, including public safety works and the demolition of dangerous buildings on site. We continue to work with the RSPB, Natural England and the Nature Group to develop the future of the site." Andrew Holman, chairman of the group, adds, "We fully recognise the importance of the area and believe that we can jointly manage greater access to this land in a way that satisfies the needs of both nature and people. By allowing access and showing current and future generations just how important these precious areas are, we will be able to aid the protection of the natural environment in this area for the future."
Hello, this is an article from the Isle of Wight Radio read by Sue. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police and Crime Commissioner announces intention to stand for Mayor. The Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight has announced her intention to stand in the first mayoral elections for the new strategic authority. Hampshire and the Solent region was successful in applying to be part of the government's devolution fast-track initiative. Under this programme, a strategic authority will be created and elections for a mayor will take place in May 2026. Typically, mayors will have responsibility for areas such as infrastructure, transport, skills, employment and housing, with powers and funding transferred from Westminster to the new authority. Conservative Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police and Crime Commissioner Donna Jones, who was elected to a second term last year, said it was clear the current devolution proposals would likely to see her role's office and the governance of the fire service subsumed to the mayor's office. The former leader of Portsmouth City Council said, "Embedding public safety within the broader scope of regional governance is key. Community safety must be a central pillar to benefit the unique aspects of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, the two councils I care so deeply about. That is why I intend to run as Mayor for Hampshire and the Solent in the mayoral elections in May 2026. Ms Jones said the plan for devolution was one of the biggest changes in governance, nationally and locally in a generation. It offered huge opportunities for the region, she added. The current Police and Crime Commissioner said strong public protection and safer neighbourhoods must be the heart of the strategic authority. Last month, the government launched a public consultation on creating a strategic authority in the region. Residents, Businesses and stakeholders have until April the 13th to share their views on the proposals for the area covered by the Hampshire County Council, Portsmouth City Council, Southampton City Council and Isle of Wight Council. Other areas being fast-tracked include Cumbria, Cheshire and Warrington, Norfolk and Suffolk, Greater Essex and Sussex and Brighton. The Devolution Strategic Authority Programme is separate to discussions taking place on local government reorganisation, which will see the current mix of two-tier and unitary councils replaced with larger organisations delivering all services.
Second homeowners to be charged double council tax from April the 1st. From Island Echo. From the 1st of April this year, any property on the Isle of Wight which is classed as a furnished second home will be charged a premium of 100% council tax as the council looks to crack down on those making money from holiday lets. This change comes after the Isle of Wight Council adopted powers set within legislation in February last year that permits councils across the UK to establish their own policies regarding empty properties and second homes. However, central government has announced some exceptions where a second home premium may not apply. For example, if a property is a place where someone in the armed forces would live if they were not in job-related accommodation. Part of another home, like an annex, for sale or rent, and has been on the market for less than a year, needed for someone's job, a caravan or boat, subject to planning restrictions affecting its use. Councillor Ian Stevens, Deputy Leader of the Council and Council Member for Housing and Finance, has said recent years have seen an increase in second home/holiday home ownership and a rise on staycations and short-term lets. These factors have reduced the availability of housing on the island. Second home ownership across the Isle of Wight is significant and is recognised to have a negative impact in terms of the supply of homes available to meet local housing needs. Initial analysis shows that the application of a 100% premium on second homes could generate additional council tax revenue in excess of £5 million, which will support the delivery of services for all islanders. To find out more information about the second homes premium, exemptions, and to fill out an exemption form, visit www.iow.gov.uk/premiums.
This is Michael reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight Council fighting to maintain status quo in face of local government reorganisation plans. The Isle of Wight Council is poised to put forward exceptional circumstances to remain as is amid plans for local government recognition. The move aims to preserve the council's current structure, reflecting the island's unique geography and identity. Next week, councillors will consider an interim report on the progress of local government reorganisation proposals in the area. Produced collectively by the 15 unitary and district councils covering Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, the draft report sets out the guiding principles the councils have agreed should inform the next stage of the process. These include financial sustainability, a clear sense of place and identity, and community feedback and engagement. The report seeks an early indication from ministers that the Isle of Wight will be granted an exception, allowing it to maintain its status as a separate unitary authority. If agreed, the interim report will be submitted to the government on the 21st of March. Further work between the regions' councils will continue over the coming months to develop final proposals. The government's reorganisation blueprint aims to establish unitary authorities with populations of at least 500,000. However, the Isle of Wight, with a projected population of 148,000, by 2028 argues that the unique circumstances warrant an exception. Councillor leader Councillor Phil Jordan explained, "While we will continue to explore opportunities for shared service arrangements, the submission, drafted in agreement with all local authorities in the Hampshire and Solent area, make it clear that the Isle of Wight should remain exactly as is in structure and size. For mainland authorities, new boundaries are not yet proposed, as there remains work to collate data to assess appropriate boundaries. The Solent, however, creates a natural boundary that makes our situation on the island unique. The cost of delivering services here is inherently higher due to the isolation and detachment from the mainland, which in turn produces a smaller market size for service delivery. We believe these factors make a strong case for the Isle of Wight to be treated as an exception. Additionally, our residents have a distinct cultural identity that does not align naturally with those on the mainland. Our submission will ensure that we present to government our exceptional circumstances and the firm case that we will remain consistent and unchanged in our services delivery on the island, for the island and by the island. Full Council will consider the report on Wednesday the 19th of March before it is presented to the Cabinet for a decision on Thursday the 20th of March. The final proposal for local government reorganisation in Hampshire and the Solent area is to be developed and considered by full Council later this year before being submitted to government, and will include local community and stakeholder engagement.
This is Patrina reading from the Isle of Wight Radio. New warehouse could support expanding companies and deliver Islander employment opportunities. A new warehouse that could support expanding companies and deliver employment opportunities will be built next to an Isle of Wight river. County Hall has approved Marine Manufacturing and Service Businesses (JAM) and Sons Limited planning application to build a large steel span industrial building in the Green Gates Industrial Estate in Cowes, next to the River Medina. JAM and Sons agent and Andrew White Planning Consultancy said the structure will comprise 3 starter units, offering flexible space for small industrial businesses. A submitted statement from the consultancy said, the application site previously contained industrial buildings rented out for general industrial purposes, but was subsequently destroyed by fire in 2016, after which time the site remained derelict and unused. The proposed scheme is to develop the site with a terrace of 3 industrial units along the south-eastern boundary and to retain and bring back into use the existing building, repaired without the need for consent, along the north-western boundary. This created 4 units to be rented out, for which the applicant envisages as starter units for small industrial businesses, offering a flexible space that could support expanding companies and deliver employment opportunities within a wholly appropriate location. A report justifying the Council's decision said, the building would appear in keeping with the character and scale of the surrounding built environment, with simple elevations finished with green cladding. The proposed development would not prejudice the setting of nearby heritage assets. The introduction of a new industrial building would not compromise nearby properties subject to controls over hours of use. The local planning authority, LPA, considers that the detailed measures for flood resilience and flood warning and evacuation plans could be secured by condition, given the nature of the use. Conditions attached to the Council's permission include a construction management plan and surface water drainage scheme being submitted to and approved by the LPA to comply with island planning policy.
Isle of Wight Donkey Sanctuary welcomes 12 new animals to its herd. From Isle of Wight Radio. The Isle of Wight Donkey Sanctuary has welcomed 12 new animals into its care. Having introduced the public to new recruits, Paddy and Murphy recently, they've now added Lavender, Evie, Amberley, Buster, Jack, Jill and Gabby, Lenny, Desmond and Treacle to the ever-expanding herd. A spokesperson for the sanctuary said they're all gradually starting to show us their gorgeous personalities. Some of them love people, and we think they're going to be popular with some of our visitors. Thank you to everyone who supports us. Your visits help us continue to provide the highest standards of care. We can't wait for you to meet our newest arrivals to see the positive impact your support makes. From the 1st of April to the 30th of September 2025, the sanctuary will be open 7 days a week from 10 till 4:30.
Hello, this is an article from the Island Echo read by Sue. Cost of dental treatment and hospital parking among health service issues. Difficulties accessing GP appointments. Further problems with hospital car park ticket machines and dental costs are key issues facing the Isle of Wight Health Service. Healthwatch, Isle of Wight's January to February intelligence report, found rising discontent among health and social care service users, with 177 negative pieces of feedback gathered. 52% of the total responses. 9 were mixed or neutral, 3%, and 156 were positive, 45%. The body's findings contrast with its previous report, December to January, which showed mostly satisfaction among residents sharing their experiences. GP and dentistry services were the two most common feedback topics, with more than 60 and over 40 negative responses received, respectively. There were also complaints about the car park machines at St Mary's Hospital. A&E and social care services mostly received praise, with 18 and 11 positive pieces of feedback. An Isle of Wight resident told Healthwatch, surgery does not enable patients to book face-to-face appointments with a GP or nurse practitioner through their online services. Neither can you book an appointment for a GP to phone you. GP home visit, nurse home visit, or any other kind of communication with medical staff. Sometimes I wonder how patients like myself are ever going to get well. Another user said they had been quoted several £1,000s for essential work which they could not afford. As a result, they will have to wait until their teeth are bad enough to be removed. NHS Hampshire and Isle of Wight have been approached for comment by the LDR.
This is the second part of the Talking News read by Tony
And Ursula.
We start with sticky plaster reaction to rockfall under fire. East Wight MP Joe Robertson has blasted the local authorities' reactive approach to problems following Friday night's major rockfall in Ventnor. He's also called on the Isle of Wight Council for a long-term strategy rather than a sticking plaster approach. Mr. Robertson visited the site of the rockfall in Redgrave Road. Mr. Robertson said, rather than simply reacting to problems as they arise, the Isle of Wight Council must develop a comprehensive, long-term strategy for the whole area. Only then will we be in the best position to seek financial support from government and public bodies to secure the town's future. Shifting rock and earth is not the council's fault, but it cannot simply wait for crisis events to happen before taking action. It must be more proactive about securing the future of Ventnor. The council must come up with a whole town strategy for the next 50 years and beyond. If it says it is cash-strapped, then the best thing it could do is to come up with a plan, because government is not going to provide financial support if it does not have a costed and credible plan to present. Isle of Wight Councillor for Ventnor and St Lawrence, Ed Blake, met Mr Robertson at the site. The MP added, "He has been telling me how millions of pounds were spent securing the road with a new retaining wall in the same place, but the council didn't address the obvious overhanging rock just above. As expected, it has fallen and damaged the new wall. We are back to square one with all that money wasted. A new approach is needed." Councillor Blake said in a statement he had also asked the council repeatedly for something to be done about the rock. Belgrave Road was closed after a rock fall in the same place in 2020, he said. The council took 3 years and spent millions on a retaining wall, but didn't deal with the overhanging rock. It was obvious the rocks above were unstable and would eventually collapse. The council should have stabilised the rock as part of the recent works. I'm just glad no one was under it when it fell.
Rockfall Like an Earthquake by John Marino. Residents living in the vicinity of the rockfall in Ventnor have described the sound it made as like thunder, an earthquake, and a bomb going off. The rockfall happened on Belgrave Road at exactly 10:55 p.m. last Friday. A large overhanging rock fell onto the road at the corner of Alpine Road, which is known locally as Windy Corner. The impact backled railings, with some of the rubble tumbling over the edge of the wall, onto the Esplanade Road below. What was left was a scene of scattered boulders and debris strewn right across Belgrave Road. Roy Rigsby of Belgrave Road, who lives about 100 metres from the rockfall, was the first person on the scene. He said, "I was awake in bed and heard this incredible noise. It sounded like thunder overhead. The house bounced. I knew it wasn't thunder, but my first thought was the retaining wall opposite had collapsed. I put on my dressing gown, went to the balcony to have a look, and thought to myself, where's the restaurant? The mushy, all I could make out was a black mass." His partner, Penny Allison, was shocked by the sound of the rockfall. She said, "I was asleep in bed and it suddenly woke me up. The whole house shook. It was like thunder, a terrific bang." Andy Kinnear, the owner of the Wellington Hotel on Belgrave Road, was also awoken by the rockfall. He said, "It was quite a loud bang. It was akin to a bomb going off." Sophie Blake, who lives in Esplanade Road, was watching TV when she heard the noise. She said, "It was unbelievable. The windows started shuddering, and then I heard an absolute rumble. The house was vibrating. It was like an earthquake." My son-in-law, who lives near me, said he was in the bath at the time and the water was moving back and forth. We have badgers living behind us, so when I saw 2 of them run off, I thought, oh my God. Member of the Isle of Wight County Press Camera Club, Steve Mew, managed to capture the full scale of the rockfall in Ventnor using his drone. View more images of the collapsed Ventnor rock landmark at countypress.co.uk.
Long-serving charity boss had tireless dedication. Following years of tireless dedication, the much-loved chief executive of an Isle of Wight blindness charity has announced her retirement. Lisa Hollyhead has been CEO of the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind since 2020, having first started working for the charity in 2018. This year marks the charity's 160th birthday and Lisa's 55th. As such, she feels now is the right time to hand over the reins. Praising her exceptional leadership, Sue Bungie, Chair of the Trustees, said, "Lisa has been an outstanding Chief Executive, making a profound difference with her tireless dedication and exceptional leadership. Her lived experience has provided invaluable insights, ensuring our members receive the right support at the right time. We are immensely grateful for her contributions and wish her all the best for the future. In the early 90s, before working for Sight for White, Lisa became the first registered blind woman in the UK to qualify as a chartered accountant. Lisa has offered to assist in finding her successor to continue her legacy. The Isle of Wight Society for the Blind is the oldest working island charity and supports over 1,000 islanders living with sensory loss, enabling them to live safely, confidently and independently. The charity is made up of two branches, Sight for White and White Sense, which offers hearing and sight rehabilitation. With over 550 weekly interactions, the new CEO will manage a team of 15 staff and over 130 active volunteers. All services offered are free of charge and can include long-term loan equipment for most clients. The new CEO will also be in charge of the charity's trading arm, Millbrook Enterprise CIC, which also includes dress agency Dress for Less in Newport. Dress for Less raises vital funds for the charity by selling pre-loved quality ladies' clothing on behalf of clients. As part of the charity's 160th birthday, on March the 29th, a fashion event is planned at the Masonic Lodge in Cowes. Guests will be treated to a glass of Prosecco and have the chance to view the agency's full range of spring clothes.
Locals say mast is too close to homes by Rufus Pickles. Residents and councillors of a coastal town have rallied against a proposal to build a 20-metre 5G mast opposite a playing field. Sandown and Lake County Hall representatives Councillor Ian Ward and Councillors Paul Brading joined locals in denouncing Mobile Broadband Network Limited's prior to approval application for a proposed 20-metre monopole supporting 9 antennae apertures and 2 0.3-metre dishes on land next to One Perone Way, Sandown. A document included in MBNL's application, 5G and Future Technology, Delivering the UK's Telecoms Future, says that though 5G telecommunication technology will undoubtedly bring new opportunities and huge benefits, there is a need for new structures, antennas and ancillary equipment. It reads, "It is estimated that 5G will directly contribute to an additional £7 billion a year to the UK economy in just 6 years from rollout. In addition, 5G offers download speeds far in excess of what can be achieved today, even by fixed-line broadband. Such increased speeds and low latency provide the potential for far greater opportunities. The internet and mobile connectivity rely upon the deployment of new fibre networks. Utilizing these fibre networks allows each mobile-based station to link back into wider core network. However, the requirements in the future are for ubiquitous coverage, and this will mean the more complex, more remote locations throughout the country will need further new installations. Those opposed to the new mast have raised concerns relating to health risks, the development constituting an eyesore, transparency in public engagement, the environment, the mast's height, and its proximity to neighbouring residential property. Explaining his objection, Councillor Ward said, "The location of the mast is very close to residential properties, and it will certainly have a negative financial effect on such nearby properties by being so visibly intrusive. There are several concerns about the negative effect on wildlife locally. There is a concern about the effect of radiation to the local area and nearby residents. The pole and associated connection boxes could be sited further away from residential properties. County Hall's public consultation on the application finishes today, Friday, and a decision is expected on March the 28th.
£600,000 for landslip road works. A spending package worth £600,000 will be spent on essential works on the landslip-hit Leeson Road as part of the Isle of Wight Council's approved 25-26 budget. Funding will be targeted at 5 areas: data collection and evaluation, ground movement surveys, a permanent signage and diversion system, associated works and project management. County Hall said the highways maintenance funding distributed across several critical initiatives shows the commitment to the upkeep and improvement of local infrastructure for the safety and benefit of our residents. The investment comes more than a year after the catastrophic landslip hit the upper section of Bonchurch thoroughfare in December 2023. An Isle of Wight Council spokesperson said, "We will cover the increased costs associated with collecting and evaluating data from the newly installed monitoring equipment. This step is crucial for accurately assessing the condition of the road and the surrounding area." New surveys will be conducted to detect any ground movement. These surveys are vital for understanding both the short-term and long-term stability of the road. The Council said the actions were based on recommendations from geological reports commissioned by the Isle of Wight Council and Island Roads. Collected data will feed into an emergency response plan to ensure any necessary road closures are supported by solid evidence. Setting out the remaining investment, County Hall said funds will be allocated for permanent signage to facilitate road closures and diversions, ensuring clear communication and safety for all road users. Additional works will be undertaken to support the road closure process if required. A project manager will be appointed on a fixed-term contract to develop long-term options for the future of the road network. The Council added that permanent signage meant fixed road signs in strategic positions along the route to Leeson Road. They would be activated in the event of an emergency road closure. The £600,000 package is fully funded by the Council's budget, with no Whitehall funding being provided for the works to date.
Isle of Wight homes left out in the cold by Oliver Dyer. An Isle of Wight woman with incurable cancer is among the many islanders struggling to heat their homes, the county press can reveal amid growing anxiety and concern over oil supply issues. Sarah Waldron from Chillerton has been unable to source new oil for 6 weeks, leaving her distressed. Her tank could run dry any minute. The issue has prompted Isle of Wight East MP Joan Robertson to pen a letter to the Minister for Energy asking the government to urgently review the situation. Like many residents living in rural parts of the island, Sarah relies on an oil tank to provide heating and hot water to her home. Solent Fuels, a leading supplier of kerosene oil, recently announced it was pausing operations, blaming the combination of restricted credit and unpredictable supply. Sarah ordered through the firm at the beginning of February and was initially quoted 2 weeks. More than a month later, and after being reassured that she would be on the next urgent batch, the oil did not arrive. Sarah then contacted Certus Energy, which told her that there were delays due to increased demand. Sarah, who has secondary cancer, told the county press, "A bath for me every day is really important because it just eases the pain a little bit. We haven't put the heating on in ages. Luckily, we've had nice weather and haven't needed to, and we've got something in the lounge to heat that." Sarah said her husband contacted Solent Fuels, disclosing her cancer diagnosis, and the firm gave a partial refund. She has now resorted to ordering from mainland firm Tank Topper and is awaiting delivery. Sarah is one of the many affected islanders who have contacted the county press. Sophie Ross from Upper Atchison has spent the first 3 months of the year living without much heating or hot water. Solent Fuels has not responded to a request for a comment, but in a letter to customers, CEO David Clanman said, "We understand this news may be concerning. Please be assured that our commitment to the Isle of Wight community remains unwavering." Despite residents' concerns, Certus Energy said it is not currently experiencing any known supply issues. Meanwhile, Mr. Robertson said he is very concerned and has been contacted by several East Wight residents. "I'm in direct contact with both Solent Fuels and Certus to request an urgent update on the situation and the steps being taken to resolve it," he said. The Isle of Wight Council said it was aware of some issues, whilst customers transitioning from one supplier to another. Isle of Wight West MP Richard Quigley has not responded to a request for comment.
Man broke victim's leg in shop row. A man, angered by a remark made against his disabled partner, could face prison after fracturing another man's leg in an attack near a Tesco store. Christopher Dickinson of Pelshurst Road, Ryde, admitted to assaulting a man and possessing cocaine on September the 26th last year. He appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday, March the 4th. Police were called to a serious assault on Ventnor High Street near Tesco, where the victim, aged in his 40s, was left with a fractured leg. Prosecutor Leah Dillon said the victim started an altercation after making a derogatory remark about Dickinson's disabled partner who has cerebral palsy. The 30-year-old reacted by kicking the man in a side-swipe motion, causing him to fall. The victim repeatedly said he thought his leg was broken, having fractured it in the same place once before. However, the victim did not wish to make a statement against Dickinson, which, Ms Dillon said, saved him from facing a more serious charge of actual bodily harm. Dickinson, who has a criminal record of 5 convictions for 6 offences, was described by his defence lawyer, Oscar Vincent, as having had a pleasant, uneventful evening before the deeply offensive remark was made. Mr. Vincent said he was upset by his partner's reaction to it. It was not a full force kick, but it exacerbated an old fracture. Magistrates ordered a report on Dickinson, considering all sentencing options, including imprisonment. He was bailed with the condition not to enter Ventnor and will be sentenced on May the 16th. At the time of the incident, police arrested 3 people in connection to the incident. As well as the defendant, a 22-year-old woman was arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm with intent, common assault, and of an emergency worker and possession of cannabis. A 38-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm with intent and assault with intent to resist arrest. They were all taken into custody while initial investigations took place.
Closure of Isle of Wight schools could cost millions, by Rufus Pickles. Concern has been raised over the financial viability of primary school closures after it emerged the controversial plans could cost the Isle of Wight Council millions of pounds. Jen Hughes, a parent representative and campaigner against the closure of Oakfield CE Primary School, raised the subject at a cabinet meeting in light of figures set out in a newly published paper. The report shows a total closure cost of £3,030,693 in 2025-26 and £473,191 the year after, but recommends the closures of primary schools in Oakfield, Arreton, Cowes, Wroxhall and Brading to address surplus capacity in the school system and better fund primaries remaining open. In a worst-case scenario, it estimates a capitalised pension and redundancies cost of £2.25 million. The local authority would also face £502,000 in costs from the deficits built up by schools proposed for closure. Reading out County Hall's response, Council Leader Phil Jordan said, "The maximum cost of school closures is estimated at £3 million. However, the actual cost is likely to be considerably less. The £2.3 million in redundancy and capitalised pension costs will be influenced by the redeployment strategy and natural staff movement ahead of closures. It's not possible to accurately determine how much the maximum cost of £2.3 million will be reduced without knowing individual circumstances." According to the school's own 24-25 budget submission in November 2024, 29 out of 33 maintained primary schools will operate with an in-year deficit. Councillor Jordan added that delaying the addressing of surplus capacity would mean school incurring greater deficits, with combined debts across maintained primary schools currently forecast at £5.2 million by March 2027. Closures would also release much-needed funding into Ireland's school system, allowing school leaders to access the resources they need. The Cabinet last week decided to defer its decision on the closures until March 20th, with Education Cabinet member Councillor Jonathan Bacon saying it was in the best interests of both proper scrutiny and transparency.
Bus driver disputes court account of horror crash. A bus driver has spoken out against the court account of a horror crash which saw a drug-impaired motorist collide head-on with a double-decker bus. The driver, who wishes to remain anonymous, disputes the claim that no one aboard his bus was harmed, as stated in court proceedings. Last Friday, the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court handed down a 40-month driving ban to Ian Phillips of Trinity Road in Ventnor, who lost control of his vehicle last August, crashing into the bus just beyond Wroxhall village on the first bend of Clarence Road. Despite the prosecution and defence stating in court that no passengers were injured, the bus driver, who has since left his job, provided a starkly different account. "We were sort of walking wounded, and we were all treated at the scene by paramedics. 2 young lads went to hospital over the night," he recalled. The driver himself suffered a severe concussion lasting 2 weeks and deep muscle pain across his upper body for nearly a month. There were 5 passengers on board the bus, the driver said. 2 left the scene after the crash, while 3 remained with him to be assessed by paramedics. Recounting the terrifying moments leading up to the collision, the driver said the passengers, in a way, were a little bit fortunate because they didn't see what was going to happen. They were sat back, relaxed, and got thrown forward into the seats in front, as so they got some facial injuries. but it was only that quick instance for them. I steeled myself against the impact. I only had a few seconds, and I closed my eyes, not expecting to open them again. Following the crash, emergency services arrived, but their primary concern was Phillips, who was seriously injured and had to be airlifted to Southampton. The bus driver expressed frustration at the lack of follow-up from authorities. Phillips had 4 prior convictions, including a drink driving offence in 2021, when he crashed his car onto its roof on Ventnor High Street and fled the scene. Yet the bus driver believes sympathy was shown towards him in court. There seems to be a strange sort of sympathy for the guy, he said. Yes, he got a lengthy ban, but to read what was said in court, he did a lot more than it suggests. I've seen the CCTV, which is only about 8 seconds long, and it's horrific. The speed he was going, it was almost inevitable he was going to hit something because he wasn't in control of the car. The driver has since sought counselling to cope and has left his position as Southern Vectis due to the trauma. I'm still not in the right frame of mind to carry 80 passengers' lives on a bus, he admitted. The driver hopes that by speaking out, authorities will take greater care in handling such cases in future. In court, Lauren McConnell, prosecuting, said the force of the impact sent the car off the road and into a field where Phillips managed to pull himself from the wreckage before the vehicle burst into flames. Phillips was over the legal limit for a derivative of cannabis. Defending, Oscar Vincent said a police investigation reviewed CCTV footage which showed Phillips had been performing the correct manoeuvre before his rear wheel clipped an object on the verge, causing him to spin out of control. He was not found to be culpable of dangerous driving, the court was told.
Residents' relief as unauthorised work puts houses on hold, by Rufus Pickles. Content for a major Isle of Wight housing development has been struck off following unauthorised work and a clear potential that harm has been caused. The Isle of Wight Council has confirmed its conditional permission for the building of 44 houses on land to the east of Birch Close and Freshwater. It has been invalidated following the end of a 2-week investigation. County Hall opened a planning enforcement case after an outcry from Freshwater residents and county councillors Chris Jarman and Peter Spink after a developer brought machinery and contractors into Birch Close last month. The Empowering Island Councillors and Journey Estates works were contrary to the local authorities' conditional permission and pointed in particular to an unmet highway safety condition for double yellow lines to be installed. Upon withdrawing the consent, a council spokesman said the local planning authority has finished looking into the recent unauthorised work at the site. Although planning permission was granted for this development, with several conditions to be met before starting, 3 conditions were still outstanding when the permission expired on February the 21st, 2025. The LPA is satisfied that the requirements of conditions 11 and 25 could be retrospectively agreed because the work done so far would not physically stop the installation of drainage systems or parking restrictions. However, the LPA has concluded that the requirements of Condition 18, which involves checking for protected species before starting work, has not been met and can't be now because of the work that has already been done. Therefore, the planning condition has not been met, cannot be met retrospectively, and there is a clear potential that harm has been caused. The Council added, no further work related to the invalidated permission should be carried out and urged the developer to engage with the LPA. Totland and Colville's councillors, Chris Jarman, said the decision was a welcome relief for residents and our community.
Get voting for Fave Chippy. The hunt is on for the island's best fish and chip shop of 2025, as the County Press invites readers to nominate their favourite local chippy. If you have a go-to spot for the perfect crispy batter, golden chips and delicious fresh fish, now is the time to make your voice heard. Nominations for County Press Fish and Chip Shop 2025 are open until March the 29th, giving fish and chip lovers the chance to put their favourite eatery in the running for this prestigious title. Once all nominations are in, the County Press will shortlist the top fish and chip shops based on reader submissions. From there, the power remains in the hands of the public, as voting will take place during the weeks of April the 14th and April the 21st. Readers will have the opportunity to cast their votes and help decide which establishment will be crowned Fish and Chip Shop of the Year 2025. To submit your nomination, visit countypress.co.uk/fish and chip shop, all one word, or fill in the form on page 18 of the County Press. There will be forms inside the March the 21st and March the 28th editions too.
Man in his 20s found dead at right address. Police have confirmed that a man in his 20s was found dead at an address in Ryde on Sunday. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary were called to a residential property on St John's Road at 5:35 p.m, following reports of the death of a 28-year-old man. Officers arrived at the scene, and while the death is not currently being treated as suspicious, investigations remain ongoing. As part of their inquiries, police were also seen on nearby Bennett Street, just off St John's Road. A police spokesperson said a file is being prepared for HM Coroner as part of the ongoing process. No further details have been released.
Plans to upgrade Play Park. A park could be upgraded with 8 new pieces of play equipment as part of a proposed works scheme. Sandown Town Council applied to County Hall for a lawful development certificate to install play equipment and related impact absorbing services at Sandown's Los Altos Public Park. STC's plans include installing a horizontal rising ladder, monkey bar rings, a balance and weave, static balancing beam, striding timber stilts, stepping log columns and chin-up bars, all of which are wooden. The land has previously been used for the same purpose, and while there is no historic planning application online, there are images of the equipment in the park, and as land owned by the local authority and operated under licence by the town council, it can be assumed this is an acceptable use. A decision is due on April 22nd.
Park's 120-year-old beech tree cut down. An iconic weeping beech tree has been cut down in a popular park, marking the end of a landmark that has stood for more than 120 years. The Isle of Wight Council confirmed its decision to fell the historic trees in Newport, Church Lytton, following a structural assessment that revealed significant decay within its main stem. After a professional inspection, it was advised that the tree was no longer structurally sound and posed an increasing hazard. Despite the sadness surrounding the removal, steps are being taken to preserve the tree's legacy. The council has partnered with Ventnor Botanic Garden to take cuttings and graft them onto understock. To honour the tree's presence in the community, a digital memorial is being created to collect Islanders' stories and memories of the tree. Residents are invited to contribute their recollections and photographs by emailing regeneration.isleofwight.gov.uk.
High-end flats plan for former care home. A former care home could be turned into high-quality housing. Chris Daines of In Safe Hands Home Care made a change of use application to County Hall to convert Bluebill House at 74 to 76 Mitchell Avenue in Ventnor into 3 apartments. Bluebill House Residential Care Home closed its doors in October 2022 due to a lack of staff availability, according to Mr. Daines' application form. A submitted planning statement said the proposal will bring the property back into residential use. It said continued use as a care home is not economically viable, and there had been no interest in considering the opportunity. It stated, this proposal offers various sized dwellings from a twin-bedroom apartment up to a 6-bedroom property, rather than purely converting the building back to 2 6-bedroom semi-detached houses, as this was in the past. There is sufficient parking underneath the relevant guidance for the proposed dwellings based on the 5 spaces available and required. This is in addition to being walking distance from Ventnor town and on the main bus route. Public consultation ends on April the 11th and a decision is due on May the 5th.
Sanctuary home awaits abused bears. Oliver Dyer. A new lookout platform, bear house and multifunctional space are among plans submitted by a popular attraction as it prepares for the arrival of the island's first brown bears. Fundraising efforts are well underway to bring Benji and Baloo to the Wild Heart Animal Sanctuary, Sandown. The former restaurant bears are currently languishing in a tiny metal cage in Azerbaijan with no area to hibernate, no water for bathing, no soil under their feet, and no chance at a normal life, according to a design, access and planning statement. To save them, the sanctuary is in the midst of building a 3,500-metre bear enclosure. Construction began towards the middle of 2024 with new bonds, fencing, services and artificial dens being constructed by Wild Heart staff and dedicated volunteers. Now, an application seeks to build a bear lookout using repurposed shipping containers. On the lower levels, there would be a multifunctional facility space, while space on top of the containers would provide a wheelchair-accessible open-roof terrace, offering further views of the enclosure and the facilities and views beyond. The aim is to bring visitors, school children, corporates and communities into the bear's world and sharing their amazing journey. The statement said, the space is designed to be multifunctional, so it can be used for events and functions, as well as being a rentable space for island organizations for away days and meetings, meaning their teams have an unforgettable day whilst supporting the charity and the care of its rescued animals with much-needed funds. Also planned is a single-story bear house described as an anchor point for the rest of the bears' lives, which has been designed to mimic their natural dens. An isolation facility is also proposed, giving staff a facility to isolate and quarantine animals for observation, health checks and behavioural observation. To date, the sanctuary has raised £205,000. The money will go towards building the new habitat as well as transportation costs. A consultation on the plans is currently live and a statutory decision is expected to be made on April the 25th.
And now a little Isle of Wight nostalgia. Isle of Wight line, always destined to fail. The 1903 Wardlock Guide to the Isle of Wight didn't mince its words. Quote, "Let us say frankly that Bembridge will not suit every taste, but if you care for a place where the evening occupations are nil, and where the only excitement of the day is the arrival of a railway train, then Bembridge is not likely to disappoint." End of quote. That wasn't quite true, because things had livened up a bit in 1882 with the opening of the Brading to Bembridge railway line. To build the line, nearly 700 acres of sea that formed Brading Haven had to be driven out by hundreds of navvies, who then built a massive embankment from St Helens to Bembridge, today's Embankment Road. Unfortunately, the promoter was the politician and businessman Jabez Balfour, who went on to become one of the biggest fraudsters Britain had ever seen. His Liberator Building Society, the biggest in Britain, famously went bust in 1892 due to fraudulent accounting and national scandal that left thousands of savers penniless. Balfour was a man who thought big, and the Brading to Bembridge line was a good example. His idea was that flocks of visitors would descend on Bembridge once the line was open, and then book into his newly built Spithead Hotel alongside the island. Sadly, it wasn't to be. After spending a fortune of other people's money on building the line, the railway finally arrived, but not the visitors. This left the line reliant on income from St Helens Quay goods traffic and local passenger trade. It wasn't enough. St Helens Quay closed in 1928, and the line itself, never troubled by profits, closed in 1953. It had some fun on the way, though. On December 1890, the county press reported this exchange on the Brading platform. Quote, "Scene, Brading station platform during the busy season. Strange gentleman, brackets, to station master bustling about the platform, close bracket. You seem to have plenty to do here, station master." Station master, "I do, sir. What with trains coming in this way and trains coming in that way, besides attending to passengers, yes, I do have something on my mind." Strange gentleman, "Yes, I know something of what it is, being station master at Clapham Junction." Well, that conversation was news to the station master at Brading, George Corbett, and he dashed off a letter to the county press. It read, "Sir, doubtless the festivities of Christmas assisted the vivid imagination of the person," the late station master at Clapham Junction, "who invented and inserted in your last issue a remarkable conversation said to have passed between himself and me at my station. I flatly deny uttering the words, and shall feel obliged if you will insert this, my denial." No more was heard.
On a December evening in 1906, a horse and trap was crossing the railway line near St Helens Station, the building still there to this day, when the horse took it into its head to turn onto the railway line, and complete with driver and passenger, it then happily trotted along the track where it met an oncoming train head-on. As the county press reported, the passengers were Mr Nash, baker of Brading, and a soldier. Mr Nash was thrown out near the station, and the soldier 100 yards further on, but the horse, however, continued its mad career. Mr Callender, the driver, promptly applied the brakes, but the animal was instantly killed. Mr Nash and the soldier were rather badly bruised, but sustained no further serious injury. The line lingered on for 50 unprofitable years, and in 1950, British Railways returns for November 4 showed that the 27 trains on the line that day carried just 79 passengers. The writing was on the wall. And so it was that the last train started its 12 minutes journey from Brading to Bembridge at 10 p.m. on September the 20th, 1953. A total of 189 tickets were sold, but in the words of the county press, practically double this number of passengers must have travelled. On arrival at Bembridge, most of the travellers lingered to watch the engine pull the now darkened carriages out of the station to the sound of a couple of blasts on the whistle under the light of a harvest moon, and a few minutes later the porter in charge locked up the station for the last time. It's fair to say that islanders were largely unmoved by the closures, most of the protest letters appearing in the county press coming from mainland addresses. Thanks to Jean and John Nash, who supplied many of the photographs.
125 years ago, in March 1900, the death of a cow on the railway at Sandown caused some hilarity in a court case. Farmer William Cooper argued that in 14 years the trains never passed at the time of the accident or at that speed. The defendant said it was a ballast train and that only passenger services were timetabled. The judge evoked laughter when he commented that, being the island, it would not be surprising if there wasn't a first-class carriage tracked onto the tail of it. He also commented that it would be the first time that a criticism of too much speed could be applied to the Isle of Wight Railway. George Nash was fined a hefty 2 shillings and sixpence, 12p in modern money, and ordered to pay 8 shillings and sixpence, 42p, costs after being caught riding his cycle without lights along Ryde Esplanade.
100 years ago, in March 1925, Canon Neville Lovett, formerly Vicar of St Saviour's Shanklin and Rural Dean of East Wight, was instituted as Archdeacon of Portsmouth. He was known to have a tremendous sense of humour. A case of foot and mouth disease was detected by a vet at Lower Watchingwell Farm, Calbourne. The Island County Council issued an emergency order preventing the movement of cattle out of an area within a 5-mile radius of the farm.
75 years ago, in March 1950, members of the Needles Golf Club came under fire when they were accused of lifting large swathes of turf the size of 2 tennis courts with which to patch up their court. Club Secretary James Ramsden denied the accusations and said that an apology in the county press and the payment of a guinea, £1.05, to the RAF Benevolent Fund would be accepted. There were plans to build a new launch to serve early morning travellers from Yarmouth to Livington so that commuters could get to London earlier. Totland Bay Pier, which was breached for defence purposes during the war, was to be repaired with a Ministry of Transport grant of £19,000. It was expected to reopen at Easter 1951.
And now we have 50 years ago, in March 1975. There was concern that dredging could be causing beach and cliff erosion on the island. A Yarmouth resident complained that dredging in the western Solent had caused about 25 yards of beach near the Saltings to disappear, and that cracks had appeared in his house as the subsoil shifted to fill holes left by dredging.
Richard Quigley, MP for the Isle of Wight West, writes the importance of having a good team around you. My team travelled up to Westminster last week, some for the first time, for training and a team day in Parliament. It's easy to look at MPs being interviewed on the news, bobbing up and down from the green benches, or sitting on committees, and forget they almost all have office staff to support them. An MP's office enables them to maximise their time and carry out their duties effectively. Even then, there's never any shortage of work to be getting on with. The offices of MPs have become like mini organisations or businesses, if you will, but I've always been clear on what I want mine to do. Throughout the recruitment process in team meetings and in last week's trainings, I've emphasised that the thing uniting all of us, driving their work and my work as an MP, is to help make the island an even better place to live and work. Now, team structures vary from MP to MP. We're all given a budget to structure the team as we see fit and to best serve our constituents, providing it's within rules set by the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, the IPSA. Most MPs will have an assistant, a researcher or two, as well as caseworkers. The latters are the ones most constituents will have contact with. That's because caseworkers are the backbone of an MP's work. They're the first to pick up the office phone, take inquiries, and then liaise with local and national bodies on behalf of the MP to help resolve issues raised by constituents. They're also the ones who help organise surgery appointments, like the ones I held last week at Pan Together in Newport. I met constituents to discuss an array of issues ranging from the personal to the political, and national campaigns to more localised ones. It also goes to show you how important it is to ensure the constituency-based staff and parliamentary staff all get it, and my team do. They know their role, regardless of where it's based. Enables me to better serve Isle of Wight West and help deliver the change the island desperately need. But even then, we can't do it alone. That's why, over the coming months and years, my team and I will be working even more with stakeholders, bringing businesses, local organisations, employers and educators together. If we're to really start to tackle the inequalities and the barriers to opportunity we face as an island, then we need to start working as a community and start building community wealth. And here we have public information. Charity offers oil alternatives. Advice is being offered to islanders affected by the heating oil supply crisis. Charity The Footprint Trust, which helps Ireland keep warm their homes, said it shared residents' concerns. Manager Laura Stitchbury said alternative temporary heating can come from electric plug-in heaters, which, while costly to run, will provide emergency warmth. Plug-in oil-filled radiators are best for space heating, while halogen heaters are a low-cost solution for heating a person in a limited space, she said. You can warm up through use of hot water bottles, heated blankets and electric blankets. And of course, keeping curtains drawn when it gets dark and draft proofing will help to keep warmth inside your home. The Isle of Wight Council said any resident that is concerned around the cost of heating their home, including those who depend on heating fuel deliveries, can visit our cost of living pages. If you are a vulnerable adult and feel that you need further assistance or know someone who is, please call our adult social care team on 01983 823 340 for help and information.
Is anything that happens online real? Be careful. By Tim Devlin, columnist. Is anything that happens online real? Some people seem to think not, that it's just a fantasy world that doesn't really exist. So it came as a shock to one lady in Southport that had tweeted on X that the terrible attack on children's dance class might have been perpetrated by an asylum seeker who had been convicted of various crimes. Riots then took place around the country. One man then posted on social media it was time to beat up the occupants of a hotel because they were illegal immigrants. He later pleaded guilty to incitement to riot and received a 20-month sentence of immediate custody. Inciting or encouraging people to commit any criminal offence is an offence in itself. Reposting an incitement is also an offence. Libel and slander, telling the public lies about someone, can also land you up in court, so be careful about retweeting things without checking if they're actually true. The person who first posted the rumour was self-styled as a social commentator. That is no excuse. We're all social commentators if we express any view publicly about anything. The law covers many aspects of postings online. The Protection from Harassment Act 1997, the Malicious Communications Act 1988, the Communications Act 2003, the Sexual Offences Act 2003, the new Online Safety Act 2023, and the Public Order Act 1986 all apply. Keyboard warriors should also be mindful of the reach of the internet. Comments may be read all over the world, and although you may be commenting just for your friends and neighbours, others in distant places may form a view about you, or the place where you lived, from what you write. Even if using a pseudonym, if it is relatively easy to find out who you are. This can be particularly important as many employers regularly conduct searches on social media to see if prospective employees are suitable people to have on a particular role or profession or someone they might want to buy goods and services from. Prospective visitors to the island can be deterred by some comments they read. Last year, I had the pleasure of meeting an influencer at a launch event for a new bar in Cowes. She attends shops and events, tries on outfits and various activities, and is paid by views online and for product placement. Social media is a powerful guide to what others may do. This may seem a bit odd, but people have always influenced by the latest fashion, new developments, or catchy gadgets. All that has changed, that as well as obtaining their steer from such eminent publications as the county press, it is now circulated online. Another area we frequently see in the courts is adults seeking to communicate sexually with people who they believe to be children. Again, some seem to think that the internet is an imaginary world, but it is not. Attempting to communicate with a child in a sexual manner is a crime, and one that is treated severely by the courts. Romance online is another arena for caution. A fraudster posts a profile of a good-looking person and chats to an unsuspecting stranger, stroking their ego and listening to their problems. Eventually, something goes wrong, and a request goes out for money to be transferred somewhere. Not wishing to lose their new trusted online companion, the victim transfers the money, sometimes several times, before the admirer disappears. So some things online are real, some things are not. It only takes a moment to put up some ill-considered post which causes serious regret later. Be careful.
And now for what's on. New acts lined up for Ventnor Fringe. Ventnor Fringe has announced the first shows to go on sale for this year's much-anticipated festival. The event, which is expected to be the biggest yet, will feature pop-up venues throughout the town, showcasing more than 150 diverse offerings in theatre, comedy, cabaret, circus, music and children's shows. Among the early highlights is Arcade, a sensory experience developed by Darkfield, set in a completely dark shipping container and inspired by 1980s video games. Using 300-degree binaural sound and sensory effects, the audience is promised an immersive experience. Another treat for music lovers is Opera Up Close's new production, Opera Cocktail. This production serves a blend of classics from Puccini, Mozart, Verdi and others, performed in English translations with a contemporary twist. In theatre, It's Your Role invites audiences to step into the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Comedy enthusiasts can look forward to the return of Ahay Shah's Pick of the Fringe comedy podcast, Drunken Women Solving Crime, as well as new material from Josie Long, Jessica Fosque and local favourites Quivers and Jack's Comedy Club. Families will enjoy Scoot Theatre's interactive show based on Quentin Blake's classic tale Mrs. Armitage on Wheels. Tickets are on sale at vfringe.co.uk.
On Saturday, the 29th of the 3rd, Shanklin Theatre Family Tour at 10:30 a.m, £6 to £7. Our 90 minutes tour is an ideal way to introduce children to the theatre. Play acting, games and dressing up make this tour an inspiring experience full of interactive activities. Shanklin Theatre, Prospect Road, Shanklin. Post promotion, shanklintheatre.com.86800. Bob Drury's The Neil Diamond Story at 7:30 p.m. £27. Bob Drury's The Neil Diamond Story, One Leisure Medina Theatre, Fairley Road, Newport, Medina Theatre Show, gov.uk, 823884.
On Friday the 28th of March, the Roy Orbison Experience at 7:30 p.m, costing £27.50. The Roy Orbison Experience, the UK's newest and most authentic tribute to the music of Roy Orbison, one of America's most famous voices, is at Medina Theatre, whose telephone number is 823884.
Isle of Wight Festival acts finalised. The Isle of Wight Festival has announced the final acts to play on the main stage and Big Top in June, including Razorlight, former Ultravox lead singer Mitch Urie, and Rhythm of the 90s. The event takes place from June the 19th to the 22nd and is headlined by Sting, Stereophonics and Justin Timberlake. The latest acts also include Yard Act, The Lilacs, Pale Waves, Twin Atlantic, Alessi Rose, Amble Neve, Ella, Arthur Hill, May Miller, Emmanuel Kelly and Matilda Mann. This year's British Eurovision entrants, Remember Monday, will also be playing at Seaclose. Among the acts already announced are Ollie Murs, Supergrass, Amy MacDonald, Lightning Seas, The Saw Doctors, Texas and The Smiths. More than 10 stages and entertainment areas are yet to be announced.
List of forthcoming events at Shanklin Theatre. On March the 27th, It's Never Too Late, Brenton West and Raj Bisram. On Friday the 28th, Ben Fogle with a presentation just titled Wild. On the 29th of March, Shanklin Theatre Family Tours. Also on the 29th, Jack Up the 60s with the Zoots. On the 30th of March, The Story of Gilda Horges. On April the 1st and April the 2nd, First Act presents Pop of the Tops. On the 4th, Fleetwood Back. On the 8th, 9th and 10th, Out of Sight, Out of Murder, presented by Shanklin Theatre. On the 12th of April, Shanklin Theatre Family Tours. Also on the 12th, Ian Sterling, Relevant. On the 17th, 18th, 19th and 21st of April, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by the Island Savoyards. On the 22nd of April, Shanklin Theatre Tours. On the 23rd, Allard Jones, Full Circle. On the 24th, An Evening with Aggers. And on the 26th, One Night in Dublin.
And last, singers to pay tribute to Man of Music. A choir will host a special memorial charity concert later this month to honour their late member, Robin Lang. The Tritone Singers will perform at Christ Church in Totland on Saturday, March the 22nd. Directed by Richard Wilkins, the evening will pay tribute to Robin's life, his passion for music, and his contributions to the National Trust and the Isle of Wight Symphony Orchestra. Robin, who died in 2024, was a dedicated warden for the National Trust and a long-standing member of the Tritone Singers. The concert will feature performances of some of his favourite musical pieces, including Brahms' Geistliches Lied, Sacred Song, and a selection from Gerald Finch's settings of Robert Bridges' poems. The evening will be premiere of a choral composition by Richard Wilkins, set to the poem Call of Summer, written by Robin's mother Judith. This poem, which was read at Robin's funeral, reflects his love for nature and his dedication to preserving it. A small string ensemble will accompany several pieces acknowledging Robin's appreciation for the cello, an instrument he played. The concert will support two of his favourite charities, UNICEF and WaterAid UK. Tickets available on the door and on the Tritone Singers website.
We have a letter from Sophie Ross of Adgeston headed Oil Supply Crisis. There is a domestic heating oil supply crisis on the island. Since Solent Fuels went bust earlier this year, there is only one heating oil supplier, Certas. Hundreds of mainly rural households across the island rely on oil to heat their homes and provide hot water because there is no gas supply to their properties. I am one of them. Certas knew the writing was on the wall for Solent Fuels for months. They knew they would be picking up more heating oil orders, yet they failed to think ahead and employ additional tanker drivers to meet the increasing demand. There's no need to increase efficiency or price competitively when you're the sole supplier. Despite taking my money in February, they still haven't delivered a month later. Telephone calls are met with, "We have too many overdues and cannot give a date," and "huge demand on the island," and "loads of you islanders calling us," and "struggling to keep up." Many of us have run out of oil. We have no heating or hot water as a result. Running out of oil not only damages the boiler as sludges from the bottom of the oil tank goes into the boiler pipes, it also requires an expensive engineer call-out to pump and restart the boiler. Pressure needs to be placed on Certas to deliver in the immediate term, and looking ahead on the Council's planning department to approve a depot for an alternative supplier. Here we go again, another monopoly of an essential island service.
Off to the south coast instead, but Richard petted Leicester. I've read that the number of visitors to the Isle of Wight staying in overnight accommodation during July, August and September last year fell by 14%. Is that due to the poor weather last summer or other factors? The cost of the ferries must be one of them. As a regular visitor to the island over the years, but not recently, we decided to have a family holiday on the island again since it's been several years. Having found a reasonably priced property to rent for all of us, we expected to pay around £150 to £180 per car, and we need 3. But we were shocked. It was going to cost a total of around £750. This was booking in December for a July holiday. The grandsons are at school, so we need July or August booking. I know some accommodation comes with ferry booking included, but we couldn't find one for the right property. Sadly, this cost could not be justified when added to the price of the accommodation. So we're off to the south coast instead. Have to battle the M25 instead of the A34 and M3. I can only see the number of visitors to the island falling unless some way is found to mitigate this ever-rising expense of getting to the island.
Hans Bromwich of Cows writes, Dear Editor, Labour, yes, Labour, are cutting disability benefits without even having conducted an impact assessment first, because if you are disabled and vulnerable, then they simply don't care. They are also all going DOCE, cutting civil servants' jobs, throwing thousands onto the scrap heap and their families into poverty because, as we all know, there are millions of jobs out there simply ready for the taking, providing AI doesn't get there first, of course, and make them superfluous. And Labour MPs? Well, they will be expected to vote in favour to show their loyalty to the party. Labour hitting the poorest rather than taxing the super rich. You couldn't make it up.
Remind me who paid the biggest price for World War II? Dear Editor, Holmes is right, the Isle of Wight Observer, February 21st. The USA did invest huge sums in Europe after the World War II, just as they have more recently and lucratively in Iraq. Still, the generous Yanks could afford it. They were late to the party, again, and didn't have their cities flattened. However, precious little made it to this country. We have had another decade of rationing, and it's only been a few years since we finished paying off their Lend-Lease scam. Plus, we still have to pay through the nose for our independent nuclear deterrent. So Trump's extortion in Ukraine is nothing unusual for Uncle Sam. As for NATO, those figures are out of date. It's just been announced that the USA now contributed less than half. Maybe that's due to a couple of new European members countries that have realized isolationism and appeasement won't protect them from bullying. J. Simons, right.
Tom Warner of Brading heads his letter, Going Back on Old Agreements. Dear Editor, many of us older folk will remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, which came about when Russia wanted to place nuclear missiles on Cuban soil a few hundred miles off the coast of America. The US were having none of it. At the end of the Cold War, when the Berlin Wall came down, Ronald Reagan negotiated with Mikhail Gorbachev that Ukraine would never become part of NATO. Understandably, Russia didn't want Western nuclear weapons on its border. Vladimir Zelensky, President of Ukraine, wants to roll back on this agreement and for Ukraine to become part of NATO. Donald Trump is trying to negotiate a peace deal with both Russia and Ukraine with Britain and France saying they would be willing to provide peacekeepers between the two factions. But Britain and France are both members of NATO. Such an idea would place NATO troops on the border with Russia, which is never going to be agreed by Russia. The answer surely is a peacekeeping force from neutral countries that are not embroiled in the current conflict. The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the Scaffolding and Skip News follows that.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello.
I love gaming, and I have my Xbox adapted so that I can still play. I have to make sure I have good lighting because too much lighting's bad, so I just close the windows, the curtains, and then I just have to stick my headphones on the ears now. Also make sure that I've got a drink next to me, so just to make sure they're clear, and then all ready to go.
The public struggle enough with the idea of blind people leading full and enjoyable lives, so perhaps it would double the struggle when they're confronted with the dual disabilities of blindness and deafness. And yet there's Emma, pursuing her love of gaming and technology with gusto. In a moment, we'll be finding out more about a new research centre which will be concentrating on the challenges posed by various forms of deaf blindness and how they can be made easier. But first, let's hear more about what life is like for two busy deaf-blind women.
Hi, my name is Emma Blackmore and I was born with congenital rubella syndrome. I'm deaf-blind and I live in Bristol. So here I've currently got my laptop out. I've got my headphones ready. If I want to do a Zoom call for work or stuff, just loading up. It helps make life so much easier because I can join it to my phone. Being deaf-blind has its challenges to get around and stuff. You have to learn to adjust in ways that are helpful for you. Each person's different, each person's sight's different, each person's hearing is different. For me, I use a cane going out and about in the community, which can be tricky because obviously you get pavement raised, cracked or whatever, and then whiplashes you a little bit. So you have to figure out the best routes to take. So right now, I'm just going to log in to get myself ready. It'll set all the apps up. I've got the apps on the screen bigger as well, so I can know where things are. And I've got my pinned apps, so certain things I use all the time. Within the house, I just make sure that I manoeuvre bits around, and I have two dogs, so sometimes they come paddling along and then I'll trip over the dog. I have no peripheral vision at all from one eye, and I'm blind in the other. Sometimes I have to have a hearing aid rest. I do recommend that to everyone who uses hearing aids, have a hearing aid rest. It helps. What I always have to have is my headphones. So I got over-the-ear headphones. They're big, they cover the whole ear. Helps me hear a lot better and blocks out any sound and stuff. So what I'll do is I'll just plug them in. If I can find the plug. Just about finding adaptions, and the adaptions could be a simple thing, not even something that is an accessibility tool. Oh, this is the one thing with computers, finding different slots you've got to put things into is very, very difficult. It's a lot, but you can live a fulfilled life, and I think that's what you have to look at. There is a lot of positives. You can still enjoy to do things. I think when you find out you're deaf-blind when you're a kid, you're not quite as up to speed with your friends. You think, well, I won't be able to do any of that. But actually, as time's going on, there's adaptations for everything. It helps me, and I'm happy to know that technology improving today, so then I can live a fulfilled life.
Hi there, I'm Jo Mellon. I live with Usher syndrome type 1D. I was born to a family deaf, But it wasn't until I was 29 years old that I became registered visually impaired. Research is so underfunded, and it's something that's very needed to have a conversation about Eurocentral in the public domain. For an example, even just a red stripe was signified a hearing loss on a mobility cane, or the red and white checkered harness on a user guide dog. It is quite astonishing how the public do not know what that means. I mean, I've got quite a busy family life. I'm a mum to 2 children, and when I step out of the front door, that's where my challenges start. It is just a sheer lack of awareness around me. Becoming a mother, it took the shine off what was an absolutely wonderful, life-changing experience, because I had to explain to the healthcare professional what my condition was and what it was all about. Autism syndrome is a progressive condition, so obviously I've been losing my sight since I was probably about 9 or 10 years old. I was just short of my 40th birthday when I had the cochlear implant. I was becoming very isolated. I was feeling very cut off from the world. So you can say that I was losing one sense, but I gained another. And that is what the cochlear implant did for me. It gave me a better spatial awareness. I could hear footsteps. I had like a better sense of the traffic around me. And it highlighted just in the first few minutes because it was so emotional.
Can you hear my voice coming through both sides?
Yeah.
Well done. It is a wow moment. It is. Yeah.
I'd always lived as somebody who was profoundly deaf. The biggest change was when I had to do like a readaptation. It was like a new identity. I had to leave that identity behind where I was just Joe who was deaf, who was using her eyes. We get very good and we start to adapt to like a new way of living, if you like. I think we all have that ability within us. We're very resilient. I think humans are. There just needs to be more positive representation out there, like the TV, the media. I never had that growing up. To feel that you're not the only one and you're not so alone, that there are other people and having very, very good lives. We are the experts in our condition, so I think it's about empowering people to speak up about their experiences, whether it's the individual or the family. And I think the more stories that are represented, then the more chance that we have. There is pioneering research that's happening, and I think if we could just put the awareness effort more into the research, I think that's the ultimate dream.
Jo Milne and Emma Blackmore. There are a number of organisations, such as Deafblind UK and Sense, which provide many services for people with the various forms of deaf blindness. So what will be the role of a new Centre for Education and Research at Birmingham City University, set up by Deafblind UK? Well, we brought together 3 experts in the field. Robert Nolan is chair of Deafblind UK. He was born with deafness and, as he's grown older, has developed an inherited form of blindness caused by Usher's syndrome. I began by asking Robert why a new centre and why now?
Why now? Probably because it should have happened a while ago. But the main reason, I suppose, is the lack of awareness of deafblindness. It is a low incidence condition, and for many, people think the solution in providing better support and services for people who are deafblind come from either the blind community or from the deaf community. And I think deafblindness is a completely separate condition altogether, and I think too few people realise that. I think education and training, we've been working well with Birmingham City University since 2019 on developing that, and deafblind people are very much part of it. But where we really have been no progress until recently is in research. Without research and without hard evidence, it's difficult for us to influence policy. It's difficult for us to encourage practitioners to focus more on deafblindness as a separate condition.
I was going to say, is that what the problem is? That because there is a duality of disability in a way, it's difficult to get people to understand what the priorities are?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, people who are deaf rely far more on visual acuity. So, for example, I have Usher syndrome, which is probably the most common cause of congenital deafblindness. And with Usher syndrome, you are born with a hearing loss. In my case, it's a severe hearing loss. but you're also born with the same gene causes progressive sight loss through retinitis pigmentosa. So growing up, I was a deaf child who wore hearing aids my whole life. Hearing aids weren't great 60 years ago. They're getting better all the time. I heard birdsong for the first time in my 30s. I started to use the telephone in my 20s, not because my hearing was getting better, but because hearing aids were getting better. And now, of course, we have Bluetooth, which is why I'm able to have a conversation with you today like this. It meant that I was very reliant on lip reading, for example. So lip reading is a skill most deaf children acquire, and I've been lip reading my whole life. And I've also relied increasingly on subtitles and caption, whether it's the theatre or whether it's the TV. Losing my sight stopped me accessing lip reading and people's facial expressions, but also access to subtitles and such like. So, for example, going to airports or railway stations, I can't hear tannoy announcements, but I've always been able to read the departure boards. Losing my sight, I can now no longer hear tannoy announcements or read departure boards. So you can see the solutions for one or the other don't support or help people who have dual sensory loss.
It's the complexity which probably makes it difficult to understand. People find it difficult to concentrate on two things at once.
I think so, and I think most discrimination is just ignorance and unintended. But for example, when I'm walking down the high street, like you, I use a long cane, and I don't hear shouts or offers of help the way you might do. Somebody who's offering help sees me ignoring them, thinks I'm not interested. But obviously, if they're not looking at me or I'm not hearing their speech clearly over the hubbub of traffic or crowd noise or whatever it is, then I'm not aware that there's an offer of help out there. It's an exponentially more difficult condition to contend with, Peter.
Well, I think that's explained some of the complexity very well. Let me bring in Dr. Peter Simcock. You're leading the work at the Centre of Education and Research at Birmingham City University. What are the priorities as far as you're concerned? What is it we don't know about deaf blindness?
Research really in the field has been described as in its infancy, and there is a general lack of awareness about deaf blindness, about this effect of deaf blindness that Robert's really helpfully pointed out. A colourful way of understanding deaf blindness, I think, for listeners, is that if blindness is yellow and deafness is blue, if you put them together, you don't get yellow-blue, you get green, a third entity. And so I think it's really important that we understand deaf blindness as a unique condition, and therefore it needs a unique and specialist response. I think there are various reasons for the limited research we have: a lack of awareness of deaf blindness, absence of a cohesive research community, limited people working in the field, difficulty securing funding, methodological difficulties. There's quite a long list. One of our key main aims of the centre has to be to respond to the urgent need for further research into the impact of deaf blindness.
Am I right in saying that perhaps when people hear the term deaf blindness, they think of profound deafness and total blindness? That's pretty rare, isn't it?
It is a common misperception that deaf-blind means totally deaf or profoundly deaf and totally blind. And some people are profoundly deaf and totally blind. The majority of deaf-blind people have some residual sight and or hearing, but it is the combined effect that causes difficulties.
I suppose the other thing is just simply when things occurred, because that will alter, partly in the way that Robert was explaining, how things develop. And does this also have an effect on provision?
It certainly does have effect on provision. It's another reason why the research is rather limited. Combined with low incidence, you've also got significant heterogeneity. So the needs of people that are born deafblind are very different from those who acquire it later in life or much later in life. The order of onset, the hearing impairment or deafness, does that occur before the vision? Do they occur at the same time? And then, of course, deafblind people, like the rest of us, differ in terms of other features of their lives. So you've got this hugely diverse group, and such to the point that when we're talking about deafblind people, we often have to think, who do we actually mean? Which subgroup within that population are we actually talking about? So this is very specialist work that we're involved in.
And I imagine this also has an effect of confusing the issue when you're trying to get money for research and funding.
Absolutely. And there have been certainly calls amongst the research community that whenever studies are proposed, whenever studies are being done with this field, researchers, practitioners, other people involved are very clear as to who they are talking about when they talk about deaf-blind people. Are they talking about working age adults who are culturally deaf that have acquired a sight loss? Are they talking about people 65 plus who have lived their entire lives as sighted hearing people but have now got age-related conditions? Or are we talking about people that were born deaf-blind and didn't have access to language, for example? Because these people have very different experiences and, of course, very different needs.
You're not concentrating on medical treatments, I think, more social effects. Why is that?
Well, there is already a body of clinical research into deaf-blindness, including that on different conditions. So geneticists, ophthalmologists, audiologists working on conditions such as Usher syndrome. There are researchers that are following people with congenital rubella syndrome and how that condition has affected them. And so there already exists a body of medical research. I'm not suggesting there doesn't need to be more, but we're focusing on the psychosocial impact of deaf-blindness because what research there has tended to be medical in its focus. And yet it's reported that the psychosocial impact of deaf-blindness is often more significant than any ophthalmological matters or audiological matters. We do hope that as our centre builds, we will liaise with clinical researchers and collaborate on future studies. But it's important that we focus on psychosocial impact because, of course, good healthcare, any kind of good care, isn't just about medical intervention, but also emotional and social outcomes.
Georgina Smerald, you're Policy Research Manager for Sense, which concentrates on people with complex disabilities. What's your reaction to the work of this deaf-blind centre?
We're just really pleased to see Deafblind UK and Birmingham City University launch this initiative because there's just such a chronic lack of research into deafblindness and the experiences of people who are deafblind and some of the challenges they face by having multisensory impairment. We know that there's nearly 500,000 people living with deafblindness on national data, and we know that number is possibly going to increase over time. Yet we know that there's a huge gap in public awareness and understanding of deafblindness, as well as a lack of innovation and also interest from government to invest in more research and services to tackle some of these challenges. And we just think it's really important to do more research to better understand experiences, but also thinking about what kind of ways we can better support and how we can change policy and practice.
Anything in particular that it'll do which hasn't been done before?
There is just a real lack, for instance, on data on the number of disabled people, but also on just deafblindness generally. Deafblindness is a spectrum and a lot of people have quite unique needs that are very individual. So there's just a huge number of gaps. We're just really supportive and welcoming of it. And we are very interested to see what findings come out because we are very keen to implement these into our own services.
Peter Simcock, just finally, you've mentioned a lot of things that need doing. Have you got a priority, say, in the first year that you'd really like to have achieved?
I think even the existence of the centre in itself, Peter, is contributing to what I think is perhaps our first stage. Because there's such a lack of data on deafblindness, perhaps our first priority needs to be simply raising awareness and increasing recognition of deafblindness as a third category of sensory impairment. It is not simply the addition of blindness and deafness, it is a third category. And this isn't recognised in all UK jurisdictions, for example. It is recognised in England, but it isn't recognised in all UK jurisdictions. We know from the data available that only about 37% of countries globally actually recognise deafblindness as a third entity. So I think the recognition of deafblindness as a unique condition that requires specialist intervention and specialist support, not from our colleagues in single sensory impaired services, but those specifically trained to work with deafblind people, has to be a priority. And of course, to support our practitioners to do that work, we need the evidence from the research that we're going to be leading on. Helen Keller described life as either a daring adventure or nothing at all. And my dream for this centre is that we will support deafblind people to enjoy the daring adventure.
Well, we'll try and come along. Dr. Peter Simcock, Georgina Smerald, Robert Nolan, thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's been a pleasure.
Well, whatever's on your mind, you can email in touch at bbc.co.uk, leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338, or go to our website bbc.co.uk/in touch, from where you can also download today's and previous editions of the programme. From me, Peter White, and producer Fern Lulham, goodbye.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Scaffolding and skips news for the week commencing the 14th of March 2025. Newport area. 1 Holyrood Street. Favian Barber's Shop, Pyle Street. Lichfield House, 19 Union Street. And 33 Lugley Street.
And now Ryde area, only Castle Street. Ryde area skips ABRI Madeira Road, Seaview, The Lodge Ferry Road, Seaview, 16 Hamilton Road.
In Cowes area, 72D High Street, Ship and Castle, 21 Castle Street, East Cowes, and the skips 39 Newport Road, Kings Road, East Cowes, and 106 Pelham Road.
In the Ventnor area skips just Shaw Road Car Park.
Shanklin area, 28 High Street, 29 High Street, and 55 Regent Street.
And Freshwater area, 3 Cliff Hall Buildings, High Street, Fluxton Cottage, Western Lane, Totland.
Sandown area, 3 Fort Street, Premier Inn 1 to 9 Esplanade, and the skips in Sandown area, Station Avenue.